Live question and answers from Birken Forest Monastery. I'm Ajahn Sona, and this is the end of a 2-week retreat on the 37 Requisites of Enlightenment. And we have a live audience, and we are including some live, you will hear live questions from the audience here. And they just finished the second week of the retreat. And we will go ahead, but first I want to say this is Mother's Day. Hi, Mom. So let's go ahead with our first question.
Our first question is from Linda from Portland, Oregon. From a practical standpoint, how should I approach something as big and broad in scope as the 37 factors? Secondarily, would you answer this differently for different types of people? For example, people with different primary hindrances and tendencies.
Yeah, it's a big topic. Many lay people will never even hear about the 37 Requisites of Enlightenment. So this is, let's say that you're getting a good education by taking this retreat. So the first thing I might recommend is that one listens to the 12 talks which I gave on the 37 Requisites of Enlightenment. And through that, you will become familiar with all of the 7 menus. So there are 7 structures within the 37 and lots of crossovers. And I go into the details of which factors are repeated and how many times and how they relate to each other. So it's a substantial collection of Dhamma. I'm sure that lots of monks don't know the 37 Requisites of Enlightenment, but it's a mainstream, it's not a commentary, it's a mainstream recommendation by the Buddha. He says, here, O monks, is the summary of the teachings. Here are the essentials, 37 requisites, and then he lists them off in groups. And so you shouldn't think that everybody in Theravada Buddhist lands can rhyme off the 37 Requisites of Enlightenment. This is something for a devoted and educated audience. And so you're asking what kind of characters or personalities should undertake this? Well, I think a little on the bright side and perhaps some education. And you simply to start it is very easy. You start with the Eightfold Path because everything basically packs into the Eightfold Path. The other teaching, which is very beautiful, is the 7 Factors of Enlightenment. This is not taught enough, I think, especially in lay retreats, the nature of the enlightened mind. There's in a lot of retreats, there's a lot of indication that you're just dealing with, the ordinary things of life and how to manage through it and so forth. But what's being indicated here is that you're, in the 7 factors, that you can swing into pretty well a permanent condition of, in the positive dimensions, positive emotional dimensions, that within that 7 factors, one is sustained within those positive emotions in all situations. So this is something to inspire you to think, wow, you don't hear about that very often. Most religious teachings don't even mention that possibility. Most psychology teachings don't mention that possibility. But in Buddhist psychology, that is an option, and the human mind can get there. So, yes, my recommendation is listen to the talks, and you will have a rough indication of it. You need to really mull them over, because I had, in 12 talks, I had to talk about all of these things, so I can't go deeply into them. But if you look on previous talks, I spend 12 talks just on the 7 Factors of Enlightenment. I spend 12 talks, I think, on just on Foundations of Mindfulness, one of the other characters. I think I gave 10 talks on equanimity alone, the 7th factor of the 7 Factors of Enlightenment. So there's a big bundle of information, deep information on it, in the talks I've given, and are on YouTube, recorded over time, and on the podcasts as well. So, by the way, it's best to go to Ajahn Sona YouTube channel, and then all of the talks are listed and organized there. So instead of just typing Ajahn Sona into the thing, or 7 Factors of Enlightenment, Ajahn Sona channel, and then it's all organized and presented in that channel. Okay, let's go on to the next question.
Our next question is from Wes from Portland, Oregon. What are some ways to develop faith for the skeptical person who isn't inclined?
I think we have to question the whole structure of contemporary knowledge. We have to be able to doubt our own times, and not to plunge into something, but to insist on being much more open-minded, not to jump hastily to any conclusions, especially regarding what is considered fact and knowledge at this time, in the scientific sense. Just to say, what did those, so many reports of people in the ancient world, the brightest and the best minds of the ancient world, were perceiving things that are outside of the normal perceptions these days. And we have to think, well, maybe the Buddha did understand something that the average person now, even the average scientist, doesn't understand. Maybe Plato was onto something. Maybe Socrates was onto something. So it's just deciding to be open-minded. What have you got to lose? And that's where it starts, to open one's mind to possibilities outside the contemporary paradigm. And you know, this word paradigm, this idea of the scientific paradigm. There's of course, a philosopher of science in the 60s, Thomas Kuhn, I think is his name, who wrote a book on the revolutions of paradigms, scientific paradigms. So just to allow ourselves to be a little free and open to it and see what happens. That's the best way. I mean, I'm from the scientific, philosophical, logical, positivist background. My boy was Bertrand Russell. He's a walking logic equation. He's an equation on 2 legs. And it's an interesting attitude. But you know, you have to remember, actually, Russell was quite honest as well. For instance, in terms of religious ideas, he wrote a book called "Why I Am Not a Christian," and so forth. And but he had some admiration for Buddhism, and also considered fairly openly the idea of metempsychosis. Anybody know what put your hands up in the live audience if you know what metempsychosis is. That's the Greek word for reincarnation. That's what Plato and Socrates, that's the term they used for metempsychosis, the transference of psyche from over bodies. And so Russell talks about that. That's an interesting idea. He was asked, are you an atheist? And he said, if I'm talking to the ordinary person, I say I'm an atheist. If I'm talking to professional philosophers, I say I'm agnostic. Because on these issues, one cannot claim to know. If you're truly logical and philosophical. And this is more or less a Buddhist attitude as well. The Buddha was not concerned with the existence of God. He set it aside. He had some arguments for why against the idea of a creator God and so forth. So this is something that we need to open our minds as well in some of the best thinkers of our time. So it's good to. It's not in my case. I'm not coming out of a naive farming village in India or something like this. I'm coming out of this the hardcore philosophical Western scientific tradition, which I feel is simply missing a lot. Yeah. So let's go on to the next question.
Our next question is from Lake from Portland, Oregon.
Ajahn, if the human realm is the most beneficial for the realization of enlightenment, are devas or beings in the lower realms able to attain enlightenment?
Yes, that question. It's so interesting in Buddhism how well it's laid out, and all of those questions have been asked and answered actually in the texts and commentaries. And quite often there's a misapprehension that you'll hear it said sometimes that it's only in the human realm that opportunities for enlightenment, because in the heavenly realms there's no suffering apparent, so you can't get enlightened in the heavenly realms. That is not correct. It's very clear that some of the devas, deva means a shining one. We're borrowing words from the Bible when we talk about angels and so forth. Deva is these beings who are something equivalent to angelic type of beings. Yes, you see in the traditional Buddhist teachings that they are impressed by the Buddha's teachings, the Dhamma, and that they are able to attain stages of enlightenment as well. It's interesting also that if a human has attained, say, the first stage of enlightenment, they might die and be reborn in the Deva realm. And then they're a Sotapanna, a Deva Sotapanna. It's only in the later stages of the third and fourth stage of enlightenment where one is not reborn in the material or sensuous heavens. So, yes, it's possible to attain enlightenment there and to be reborn in some stage of enlightenment, not the most advanced stage of enlightenment, but in the two lower stages. The beings in the lower realm are said to not be lower realms, meaning ghost realm and below. The painful realms are said not to be able to attain enlightenment because it's too painful. They don't have time to reflect. There's too much pain in the situation that stands in the way. So in that sense, it's very difficult. One has to wait till on the good side of that is that there are no eternal realms. So even in the most painful realms, duration is limited, and eventually your sentence is up and you're reborn in a new realm, and perhaps you have an opportunity in that realm for hearing Dhamma and understanding how to improve the quality of your consciousness. Okay, next question. That was live from Lake right here.
Our next question is from Bob from Portland, Oregon.
Ajahn, are the last 4 factors of the 7 factors of enlightenment the same as the 4 jhana levels?
That's a good observation. And it's interesting that, so the fourth factor is joy. The 5th factor is serenity. The 6th is samadhi. The 7th is equanimity, or upekkha. And if you look at the 4 jhanas, the characteristic emotion of the first jhana is joy, and including the second jhana, and then it goes into a more serene condition in the third, and in the 4th jhana, equanimity is the dominant emotion. So it does map over the 4 jhanas quite nicely. The last 4 factors of the 7 factors of enlightenment maps over the 4 jhanas quite well. But the problem is that the 6th factor of the 7 factors of enlightenment is explicitly samadhi. So within that factor is the 4 jhanas. So then you have to explain, well, why is the joy there if joy is the first factor the dominant emotional factor, the first jhana? Why is it there in the 7 factors of enlightenment as the 4th factor before you even get to samadhi? So then you reason about this. You answer, or you think, well, it must be that there's another kind of joy which you carry around, and it isn't of the condition, it isn't of the strength and depth of the jhana joy, but it is joyful emotion. So that must be what they're referring to in the 4th factor of the 7 factors of enlightenment. This is a joy which you can walk around with, and this is, of course, the case. Of course you can be joyful as you walk around, and you're able to converse joyfully, you're able to experience joy, even into your sleep. Even in your dreams joy can be brought into your dreams. So it's important that the 7 factors of enlightenment, they're not all occurring only in the deepest samadhi states, that you're actually walking around and should be available 24 hours a day. The deepest ones, like the samadhi, though, are, you're in the deeper samadhi, in the deeper jhanas, you're in a immobile, sort of a sitting posture that allows you to completely focus and withdraw from the outer senses. So this is one of the definitions. So people debate this, can you enter jhana and walk around and so forth? And well, one of the clear statements is that you're withdrawing from the sights, sounds, smells, tastes, touches. And in the second jhana, you're withdrawing from ideation itself. So it's very awkward to walk around and talk when you're not seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, or thinking. I would suggest that you're in a sitting posture, and it's very deep. So, but the other ones must function all the time. Energy, investigation. You don't need to be. You can be investigating as you walk along the street, sitting waiting for a bus. This is Dhamma vichaya, the 2nd factor. Mindfulness is available all the time in all postures, etc. So that's how you would meditate on that and answer those kind of questions. I don't want to just answer the question. I want to talk about how you get that answer. Yeah. Okay, next question.
Our next question is from Jay from Seattle, Washington. The 4 Noble Truths are the foundation of Buddhism. why don't they appear in the 37 requisites for enlightenment?
Well, they do. They do because they appear in the Eightfold Path. So the Eightfold Path contains the Four Noble Truths under right view. So it starts under right view. Also, you can say, I don't think we'd be cheating to say that under right mindfulness, the seventh factor of the Eightfold Path, in the fourth category of mindfulness, there's these things that are listed, and one of them is the five hindrances, 5 condas, 6 sense bases, 7 factors of enlightenment, Eightfold Path, and 4 noble truths. A bit redundant. It's kind of weird that the 4 noble truths show up in the 7th factor of the Eightfold Path, and the Eightfold Path shows up in the 7th factor of the Eightfold Path. We call this is a recursive structure, where things reflect and circle on itself and reflect back and forth with itself. So yes, implicitly and somewhat explicitly, the Four Noble Truths do appear in there. Yeah. Okay. Next question.
Our next question is from Ruby from Portland, Oregon.
Ajahn, what is the single most important of the 37 requisites to cultivate, especially as a householder?
Well, I would say the Buddha gives a teaching where he says there are 2 qualities most conducive to enlightenment. One is external, one is internal. The external one is a kalyanamitta, or a wise spiritual friend who has some spiritual accomplishment. That is the external, most important faculty. The internal one is what's called yoniso manasikara, which is the capacity for wise reflection. And there this word wise. So this faculty of wisdom is the most significant of the 37 requisites of enlightenment, and it occurs 5 times. Vimamsa, so it occurs in the 4 iddhipadas as vimamsa. It occurs in the 7 factors of enlightenment, in Dhamma vichaya. It occurs in the Eightfold Path under right view. And it occurs twice in the 5 faculties, 5 powers as panya, wisdom itself. And so that's the one. I mean, you can have all the samadhi you want, but if you don't have the wisdom, it's not going to flower into liberation. You can have a lot of energy, you can have a lot of determination, you can have equanimity, all kinds of things, but if you don't have that wisdom, then that's the deciding factor that pushes you over. That's where the code is cracked. That's where the solution is found, with that faculty. And that's why they would call it wisdom. And it's not just smarts. It's just not intelligence, not IQ points. Got to think about IQ, measuring IQ. I think the smart person takes IQ tests and gets good marks on IQ tests. But the wise person might think, I think this is a waste of time. I have better things to do with my time than finding out how smart I am. Since you can't improve it anyway, so why do I care what it is? It's a given, but I have only a certain amount of time to work on the real problem. So this is almost an IQ test itself. It's kind of like Alexander the Great goes to, somewhere along the line, he goes into the cave, and then there's the Gordian knot, which has been there from time immemorial. It's hanging from the ceiling of the cave, and it's a knot, and nobody has been able to undo it at all. And so Alexander shows that he's a smart guy. He passes the IQ. He takes his sword out and just cuts it in half. Doesn't try to undo it. Just because you say, can you undo it, Doesn't mean that I'm going to try to undo it. I mean, there's a lot, I don't know whether that actually even happened, but enlightenment is cutting to the chase. Like, do I want to solve the problems of my life, or do I want to dissolve the problems of my life? So enlightenment is dissolving the problem rather than trying to solve the problem. Okay, next question.
Next, we have a question from Jessica from Vancouver, Washington.
Ajahn, is divisive speech reporting one person's faults to another, or is it reporting one person's faults to another with the intent to be malicious?
Yes, to cause disharmony and division is the motive, because it's very clear that sometimes we have to report somebody else's problems, faults. I mean, criminal activity and so forth, we have to report it to somebody else. This is not a good thing that we're reporting. This is a major fault. This person likes to kill people, so I have to report that, Sergeant. Now, this is the right motive for that, and of course the monks have to correct other monks and say that this monk is misbehaving and so forth. But it's not for the sake of just division. It's for the sake actually of repair, of improving the situation. And so, yes, it comes down to motive for malicious speech, divisive speech, yes. Okay, let's go to our next question.
Our next question is from Chrissy from Portland, Oregon. Is there a most significant component of the Eightfold Path for organizing one's practice?
Yeah, it has to be right view. Right view is the first, samadhi is the first factor of the path. And it tells you everything. It tells you all the categories of how the other ones fit in. What is right speech about? What is right action about? Especially what right mindfulness, right samadhi. Samadhi without right view is just samadhi, and it's only because samadhi. By the way, samadhi means like concentration. This lucid, clear-minded focus, the capacity for that, is at the service of right view. And it doesn't get the little prefix sama in front of it if it's not that. You can have, and obviously people have good concentration. And in fact, the Buddha's cousin, Devadatta, who eventually attempted to kill the Buddha, caused a schism in the Sangha, had very good samadhi. He lost it later on because it wasn't governed by right view. And this is what will happen to concentration, good concentration, is that you will lose it if you don't have an ethical function around it. And lots of people have, like very brilliant people have, with good concentration, have applied their brilliance in the wrong direction, and later on it comes back and it shatters their capacity to pay attention, because they have bad conscience about it. It destroys their capacity to sustain attention. So the organizing factor, the primary organizing factor, is right view in the Eightfold Path. Yeah. Okay, next question.
Our next question is from Joan from Bend, Oregon. I've read that the end of suffering is concurrent with the end of consciousness, or vijnana. Is this so?
Well, there is the end of suffering, which is attained what we call with condas remaining. So the 5 condas which constitute a human are the body, perception, feelings, consciousness, and volitions. And enlightenment is attained in this very life. A person is walking around full enlightenment. Arahantship is attained in this very life, with the 5 khandhas intact. And at that point, the psychological dimension of suffering ceases, and the person is perpetually floating around in the 7 factors of enlightenment. That is the nature of the enlightened mind. So that's the description of the enlightened mind. So in that, you don't see the manifestation of the 5 hindrances. You don't see the suffering elements. You see well-being, joy, and deep ease. The body, though, can so-called suffer. In other words, there's pain in the body, but it's not experienced as psychological distress. The Buddha himself had a bad back in his later life, and quite often had to lay down just to get some ease from the bad back. And he said, I'm never out of this pain except when I'm in samadhi. And so, obviously, the bodily suffering doesn't end with enlightenment, but consciousness is still persistent. But at parinibbana, final nibbana, that is the passing away of the arahant, or of the fully enlightened person, is the cessation of the 5 khandhas. And one of the khandhas is consciousness. That ceases. And then, of course, all kinds of alarming questions come up. Say, but what do you mean? Are you saying that's it? Or not? I'll answer that some other time. Next question. Yes.
Our next question is from Greg from Portland, Oregon.
Ajahn, why are the 5 hindrances and the 5 khandhas not featured in the 37 requisites for enlightenment?
Yeah. Good question. They're not featured independently as a set, but they do occur in the 4th of the 4. The Eightfold Path is is a set in the 37 requisites of enlightenment, and within that are the 7th factor is right mindfulness, and under right mindfulness is 4 kinds of right mindfulness. The 4th of them is mindfulness of Dhamma categories. Also, the 3rd category is mindfulness of the mind. It's called Chitta Nupassana. And under that, you also have some kind of an independent form of the 5 hindrances. It says to inquire, am I angry or not? Greedy or not? Deluded or not? Expansive or contracted? So those are some of the 5 hindrances extracted from there. On the next page, when you turn it over, you get the mindfulness of Dhamma categories. And the first of these is 5 hindrances. And the second of them is 5 khandhas. So 5 hindrances, 5 khandhas appear in the 4th foundation of mindfulness. And the instructions regarding them, regarding at least the 5 hindrances, are in the 6th factor, right effort. And it's very clear. So the Buddha goes through what is right effort, prevention, and removal of what? The 5 hindrances. So that's where that's mentioned. The 5 khandhas actually can be kind of grouped under the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So various people have pointed this out, like, what are the 4 foundations of mindfulness? Mindfulness of the body. What's the first khandha? the body. Mindfulness of feelings. So one of the condas is feelings. Mindfulness of the mind, the chitta. So one of the condas is perception and consciousness, and then sankharas. So those three could be categorized under mindfulness of the mind, but they also could be categorized under mindfulness of Dhamma categories, especially sankhara, because it's making sankhara is your volitional activity, your decisions, and this is a critical kanda. It's the thing that creates the kama as well. Like, these are the moral decisions you make in life, the ethical decisions which have consequences in, karmic consequences, vipaka, or there's going to be the fruit of your actions, good and bad. And this could be sort of grouped under the fourth of the mindfulness, fourth foundation of mindfulness. So the khandas can sort of be found in that grouping. So, the Buddha is kind of giving you a handful of categories, the 37 requisites of enlightenment, but when you look into them and you unravel them and you start to take them apart, you start to see, oh yeah, right, so there's more to it than 37. It brings in all the important elements, and this is why he groups it that way. He does this a lot with, he would say things like, all dhammas converge in feelings. And so there's whole teachings on this, like some of the Vipassana schools have, there's a lot of preoccupation with feeling the tiny sensations in the body, feeling the movement, moment to moment kind of thing. Because there's a sutta called mindfulness of feelings, and the Buddha says all dhammas converge in feeling. But then he says, all dhammas converge in sankharas, and then he says all dhammas converge in this and that. So you don't want to over exaggerate. Different personalities will respond to different focuses of teaching. So you can find the 5 hindrances and the 5 khandas in the 37 requisites of enlightenment. Yeah. Okay. Next question.
Our next question is from Scott from Bend, Oregon.
Ajahn, when meditating, I have a tendency to only dwell in pleasant mind states. Is this skillful?
Yes, if you can, by all means, dwell in. You'll hear Dhamma teachings where you're not supposed to be selective. You get this phrase, choiceless awareness, and sort of so forth. Choiceless awareness is not part of the Buddha's vocabulary. It's highly choiceful. There's a lot of choosing going on. Whole lot of choosing going on. Extreme amount of choosing and deliberate cultivation. So this is what right effort is, and that's why I spend a lot of time talking about right effort. You are highly discriminating in what goes on in your mind and in your emotional field, and you are explicitly asked to delete these negative things, prevent and delete. Prevent the 5 hindrances, which are the unpleasant emotional states, and to cultivate the 7 factors, which are pleasant. They're always pleasant. Now, there's, of course, it is possible to experience, so it is a little kind of side teaching, the Buddha talking about greed, anger, and delusion. And he says, greed is a lesser stain on the personality, very difficult to get rid of. Anger is a great stain on the personality, but easier to get rid of. Delusion is a great stain on the personality and very difficult to get rid of. Why is it that greed is a lesser stain and hard to get rid of? Because greed appears accompanied sometimes by pleasant feeling. So desire is not always unpleasant. So he's talking about sensory desire, sensuous desire. Whereas anger is easier to get rid of because it's always accompanied by unpleasant feeling. So the pleasant feelings that we're talking about, if we're trying to induce pleasant feelings, it's not through just thinking about apple pie or some sensory thing. Those are not the pleasant states we're attempting to induce. The pleasant states of the 7 factors of enlightenment are produced by non-sensory kind of things. The Buddha, though, doesn't condemn a person who can enjoy themselves with what's called the 5 chords of sense pleasure. And he says, a person is unfortunate if they can't enjoy the 5 chords of sense pleasure, which are sights, sounds, smells, taste, touches. Then they have some sort of negative karma. If they can't, you can imagine walking around, and there are lots of people who can't, no sights delight them. People are impervious to music. They have no enjoyment of music or the beautiful sound of somebody's pleasant voice or the sound of the birds and so forth. They have no ability to enjoy these basic pleasures. So the Buddha is saying, well, that to be born like that, or just raised without the capacity to enjoy the normal things of life is a deficit. And a person who is healthy and has a mind which can enjoy these 5 things that's good karma that they have. That's good vipaka. But it's not good, and it's not the best. One should hope to go beyond that. But if you have so he talks about people who they have a good family life and they have some money and they enjoy having everybody over for dinner. They're generous and they enjoy the meal and they enjoy the conversation. They enjoy the music. This is if you can do that, you're a fortunate human. There are people, lots of that. They don't have the knowledge to find joy in that. Doesn't mean that's the highest. It just means that that's you have some human happiness, and that's all. Most humans they'll be lucky to have that. We're not lucky, but karmically, that's a karmic result. But the Buddha is saying, but please go on. There are greater and higher happinesses than that. Please increase your demands and aspire to higher things. Yeah. Okay. Next question.
Our next question we'll take from the live chat from Echnoderm. Excuse me if I get your name wrong. Most Venerable Sir, what are some ways in which one can increase Vira energy when one is feeling apathetic or uncurious towards their Dhamma practice?
Yeah, the Buddha has some techniques. And first of all, it's just sometimes so there's 2 kinds of what's called tinamidda. This is the 3rd of the hindrances. And there's 2 parts to it. There's 2 words there, and sometimes translated as sloth and torpor. One is of the mind, the other is of the body. So we can be our mind is not fatigued, but our body seems to be. We can just feel a heaviness of the body. Also, if you don't have enough to eat, if you're calorically deficient, then your mind can be all right, but your body is really out of energy. And then there's the other kind, which is the sloth thing, the tina. It's the mind is dull and heavy. So you're going to have to approach this by two means. One is, do you want to re-energize the mind, or do you want to refresh the body? If it's the body, then you just, go splash cold water on your face. Maybe drink a glass of water just to hydrate yourself. Make sure the temperature of that your body is not overheating, or that it's too cold. Change posture, another suggestion by the Buddha. Go outside, look at light, and if you can't look at light, imagine light. Then for the mind, so this is like the same thing you would do if you're a sensible person and you're on a long drive and you're starting to get drowsy at the wheel. You really can't afford to get drowsy at the wheel. Asleep at the wheel is a bad idea. So the sensible person, turns on the radio, winds down the window, gets some air. If that doesn't work, then they might pull over and get out and walk up and down for a little while. And if that doesn't work, they stop and get themselves a cup of coffee. And if that doesn't work, finally, they stop at the first motel and go to sleep. And sometimes the refreshment has to take place, and you're not getting enough sleep. So as far as meditation objects, the Buddha recommends the recollection of death as a energizing topic for raising energy. And as you see, if you are confronted by danger, you will be wide awake. And we tend to forget that life is dangerous. It's not. There's two philosophers, Nietzsche and I forget the other guy. But Nietzsche says, live life dangerously. And Santayana, I remember the guy, Santayana says, life is dangerous. You don't have to live life dangerously. It's dangerous. Try to be safe. There's no place where it's safe. No place. It is dangerous. You have to remember that you're in a dangerous situation here. So when you remember that, life is always dangerous. There's threats to it everywhere. This wakens you up and it makes you think, I got to use it wisely. Is there something I should be doing? So that's the kind of how do you develop this Vira for both for the mind and then for the body as well. Next, yes.
Our next question is from Curtis from Knutsford, BC. What is the role of reviewing one's good deeds in the cultivation of faith and energy?
This is very important. The Buddha is like, sometimes I think in the West, people are thinking they should be modest and forget their good deeds, not dwell on it like as if it's conceited. But the Buddha is actually thinks it's very important that you, not only do you enjoy the doing of the good deed, it energizes you and creates positive karma. You're going to have good results from your good deeds. And one of the good results you can have is just to remember the good deed. So the more often you recall it, the more juice you get out of it. Please recycle, reuse, and whatever. Repackage the good deeds. And especially close to the time of death, this is something, if you go to visit hospices, if you do that kind of works, which is a very beautiful thing, there's all kinds of people in hospice or near the end that one of the things that you can bring to them, because quite often people they start recalling their bad deeds and all the things they should have done and negative stuff, and that's a bad idea. But they don't. If they're not told it's a bad idea, they don't know that. And you should say, it's time to recall your good deeds. And they might say, well, what good deeds? Did you ever say hello to anybody? Did you ever smile at anybody in your life? Did you ever say, you want a cup of coffee? Did you ever tidy up the dishes? There's thousands, tens of thousands. The ordinary person does tens of thousands of good deeds. And one of them is just like being, being joyful or conducive, communicating with another person, sharing anything. These are the thousands and thousands of things that are good deeds. And you try to remind them of that. And you have to fish down and say, like, it is a good deed to say good morning. How many times have you done that in your life? Have you ever smiled? Thousands of times. So think about that. Stay on that. And don't think about negative things. Why would you think about it? It's done. There's no benefit in it. It drags your consciousness into a negative state. And the reason, from a Buddhist point of view, is there's a lot riding on the last moment of consciousness. And if you can push it in the direction of positive, it's a lot of benefits can happen. There's a huge amount of analysis in Buddhist teaching, especially in what's called the Abhidhamma, about how consciousness works, how volitions work, and especially, say, the last moment of this life, the critical factors involved in that. So it's very important that one can override. If one has done negative things, that won't necessarily play out if one can persuade that the last moment to go in a much more positive direction. And the negative things that one has done are not removed. They still have vipaka at some point in time, but it can influence that last moment. So he talks about people who have been unskillful ending up in heaven, and people who have been quite skillful not ending up in heaven, because of this determining the last towards the last of their life. I wouldn't, you see in maybe the Catholic thing about the last, whatever it is, the last rites and so forth, but that's not what we're talking about. You have to infuse it with memory, and there's no magic way at the last moment to pluck that out and change the direction of their life. But they can, if they can dwell heavily on positive memories. So it's very important to celebrate your good deeds. There's nothing conceited about that. And it'll make you want to do more. And that's the point of it. And you get good results from doing positive things. Okay, so we probably have one more question in us.
Ajahn, the next question is from the live chat from No One Everyone. Dear Ajahn Sona, which one of the faculties in the 5 aggregates is responsible for making the choice of clinging or letting go? Or that if this subtle choice-making faculty is beyond the 5 aggregates?
And before I answer it, you can think, now how would I answer that? Well, it's not so hard. It's sankhara is the aggregate. It's because sankhara is that's your volitions, what we would call in English volitions, the ethical, moral decision making. And that is the one that is going to be the moment. That's the faculty that where one path arises. So the way they talk about enlightenment, especially in Abhidhamma, is that there's a single moment where the path arises, and you are no longer who you were. At that moment, you're no longer who you were, And now there is a new, you're a change of lineage is what they call it, a change of lineage. The problem with the language is that you're never a thing to begin with. You're never a person to begin with. And that's why you can change lineage. You're just a kind of a conditioned flow. And then if this determination arises, it goes in a different direction. It pops into another level of being. And you are now changed, significantly changed. It is a new birth, in a sense. So this is, the faculty is sankhara. But it's assisted by the other faculties. So it's not just one thing going on. It's assisted by perception. It's assisted by causes put in. So this brings us right into this whole teaching called dependent origination. Causes have been put in which allows the new realization and decision to arise. And until enough causes have been put in, that decision cannot arise. So in a kind of a mixed way, sankhara is the dominant deciding faculty, but other aspects of the condas, the perceptions, feelings, consciousness itself, have to participate in this as well. Okay, well, we have come to the end of our time with the Q&A, and we're happy to have had our live audience as well today, as well as our virtual audience around the world. We'll be back next week without the live audience, but they'll be watching. Yes.